When Abraham went to sacrifice Isaac, at some point, God told him to tell the servants to keep off. He only proceeded with his son. They are all headed somewhere. And Abraham with his son continued. At some point, God told Moses to go alone to the mountain. And if you don't want to go to the mountain with me, I'll leave you, because your role in my life is down there. If you want me to continue with you, climb up the mountain. You know, many times in the ministry of Jesus, he separated himself from the crowd and went to talk to the 12. At times, he left the 12 and selected the 3. Let me say this. You can perform in a manner that is inconsistent with the level of your association. You must learn who you need at what season in your life. Your destiny is inextricably bound to your associations. Your associations determine your destiny. While investigating and studying the economy of his country, Vilfredo Pareto said that 80% of the wealth in his nation is controlled by 20% of the populace. And that has since been extended to different fields of endeavor to suggest you only need 20% of your friends. You only need 20% of your effort. Selection is the name of the game. Learn to say no. Wisdom is just not knowing what to do, but wisdom is also knowing what not to do. Wisdom is not just knowing who to meet, wisdom is also knowing who not to meet. They are valuable people in the eyes of God. They are valuable people in the eyes of their families, but they may not be valuable to your purpose. You don't have to meet them, and you don't owe them an explanation. Jesus didn't explain when he said, I want just Peter, John, and James to go and pray for the sick. You don't owe anyone an explanation. That also means if you're finding people ignoring you, maybe you're not growing. If you make a phone call 2, 3, 4 times to Kinyanjui and he's not picking it, you need to check whether you're adding value to him. It has to be two-way. Does that make sense? Yes. You can't just be expecting to be receiving, but you're not on the giving end. Relationships must be symbiotic. They must be mutual. So I suggest to you, you will not move from where you are to the next place unless you shift from your associations. You must work with people who don't judge you after your history, but who look at you from your destiny. Yes. People who know your past hardly believe in you. Yes. And one reason we are creating this forum is because we believe in you. Why? Because we don't have your history. Once you outgrow us, please move on. Review your associations periodically. Let's go to number 5. Shift your environment. Shift your environment. I read an academic paper on an experimenter who was doing an experiment with some fleas that attack dogs. And he put them in a glass like this and covered with a metallic lid. And the fleas began to jump. But they were hit so hard by the lid. After several trials, they gave up jumping. The experimenter decided to remove the lid. But although now they were free to jump out, they never did so. They were already conditioned to remain inside the glass. You see, one of the questions I've asked myself 1,000,001 times is Africa cursed? You know, I was reading one of the reports of IMF World Bank, and Kenya was number 146 out of 185 wealth per capita. Now, wealth per capita is the real judgment of how people are doing in an economy. GDP is the total production of an economy, whether by citizens or non-citizens in that economy. GNP, on the other hand, is the total production of an economy by the citizens, whether they are within the country or outside the economy. But the best measure of how people are doing in any given economy is wealth per capita. What's that? The total wealth divided by the total population. Out of 185 countries, we were number 146. Tanzania, 151. Uganda, this is the latest statistics. Uganda, 162. Rwanda, 166. And Ethiopia, 167. 169 was outside Africa, but guess who? Haiti. Now we like bleating about our colonial heritage. Guess what? Haiti got independence from France 1804. I didn't say 1904, 1804. Number 182, Liberia. These were freed slaves from America who have governed themselves since 26th of July, 1847. Self-rule since 1847. Number 182. 183, Burundi, our neighbor. 184, DRC. For your information, DRC produces 18.6% of all the diamond in the world. Virgin land. Almost every single resource is there. They are number 184 out of 185. Guess who was the last? Central Africa Republic. 185 out of 185. They are the 8th largest producer of uranium, the most important ingredient in the formation of nuclear machines. There's a neighbor I didn't mention. Did you notice? Which neighbor? Somali was beyond ranking. Would you believe that? David Walker. Beyond ranking was Somali. So I asked myself, is Africa cursed? Don't talk about our colonial heritage. Why? Number 1 out of number 185. Anyone to make a guess? Anyone? Make a guess? This is going to surprise you. Who do you think was number 1? Anyone make a wise guess? Qatar. What? Qatar. That means every Qataris is born a millionaire. And number 7, United Arab Emirates. The reason I wanted to mention these two countries, they were given independence by the UK 1971. 1971. Oh, you're talking about minerals? No. Zimbabwe, a very rich country endowed with all resources, got independence in 1980. A very wealthy Rhodesia was led by Ian Smith. One single president has ruined the economy. So I want to suggest to you, there is something called an African mindset. You can't tell me why Africans in the Caribbean are poor. There's an African mindset. There's even a national mindset. There's a community mindset. There's a family mindset. Now this is hard. This is hard. Take it very kindly. Very, very kindly. If you come from a single family, you are likely to be more vulnerable to continue with that trade unless you put a stop. And I'll explain to you how to do that. If you come from a family where they show EABL dust because they finish all the drinks around, you are more vulnerable. You're likely to be more vulnerable. If you come from a family where they do wife battering, you're likely to be more vulnerable. Because there's such a thing as a family mindset. But you know what, tonight? You can choose to put a stop to a wrong mindset. You can be a pathfinder. You can be a trade setter. You can start a new generation of clean-minded people. Some of you listening to me here tonight may need to physically relocate from where they stay, because even God is unable to speak to you in your current residence. I don't know why God many times will tell Abraham, get out of your country. But some of you, you don't need to relocate physically, because you can be in that neighborhood, but you're literally not in that neighborhood because your mind has already gone forward. But we need a shift in this environment. For how long shall we borrow from the first world? For how long shall Africa stop begging? When shall Africa export wealth? I'll tell you the answer. When we change our mindset. Let me explain. Let me explain. Most of the countries in the Middle East are not democratic countries. Are you with me? They don't have democracy. So there's something more than democracy. There's something more than the timing in our independence. It is all about our mindset. What is the African mindset? Everyone who gets in position of power, we have a poverty mindset. So we want to grab as fast as possible. That is the thing we need to deal with. That is the curse in Africa we need to deal with. To embrace abundance mentality. Please understand, we are not the first victims of this. When the Israelites left Egypt and they found themselves in the desert, they got confused because of the abundance of the provision. God gave them so much, they began wanting to go back to Egypt. You see, a slave's identity is his master. They couldn't visualize all the abundance in the desert. You know, oftentimes people prefer the hell they know than the heaven they don't know. I read of a story of a soldier who was captured. And then the captain of the enemy forces called him and said, "Sir, tomorrow morning I'm going to give you two options. Option number one, you're going to face the firing squad. Option number two, you're going to exit from this door." Then the soldier asked the captain, "What is beyond that door?" The captain said, "That's not my business. Those are the options I've given you." The following morning, the soldier woke up, and the captain went to him and asked him, "Sir, what did you decide?" The guy said, "I've chosen to face the firing squad." A few minutes later, the secretary of the captain asked him, "Mr. Captain, sir, what is beyond this door?" And the captain said, "Freedom. Freedom." Many people prefer the hell they know than the heaven they do not know. That is why the Israelites prefer to go back to Egypt than the heaven they were promised. 10 out of the 12 spies, when they saw the land, they came and told Moses, "That land swallows the inhabitants." Have you ever heard of any land that swallows people? Do you know in essence what they were saying? The land is too big for us. We are used to slavery. We are used to a limited land. And this is a vast land flowing with milk and honey. I confirm, Moses, there is milk, there is honey, but it's too much for us to bear. We can even be swallowed by the abundance. Scarcity mentality. There are some people here, if you give $1 million, they can't walk in the streets. They will be suspicious of everyone around them. We need to shift that mind and believe God for infinite possibilities. Shift number 6. Are you with me? Shift from our excuses. Shift from our excuses. You see, excuses, they help you to achieve 3 things. Number 1, excuses help you to quit the journey. They give you a reason for not completing the race. Number 2, excuses give you a reason for not being exceptional. You settle for mediocrity. You settle for something lower than you are designed to be. You live below your privileges. And number 3, I tell you tonight, it's easier to go from failure to success than from excuses to success. So today, I want to give you a different definition of maturity. Because most of us believe maturity is a factor of age. How wrong can we get? Oftentimes, age comes alone. You can have an 18-year-old boy who is mature and a 50-year-old man who is immature. And there are in between the two who is willing to take responsibility. So long as you have someone to apportion blame, you blame your background, you blame lack of a college degree, you blame your ex, you blame your in-laws, you blame your stepmother, what you have done, you have put yourself, you set yourself for failure. It's easier to blame an ex. It's sweeter to blame my father who didn't pay fees. It's easier to blame the stepmother who said I'll amount to nothing. It's easier to blame the government of Kenya. It's easier to blame your boss. It's easier to blame someone who raped you when you were 14 and destroy your next 70 years. Being responsible means if it is up to be, it is up to me. In this life, bad things will always happen. In this life, people will always hurt you. When you don't achieve your goals because of blaming those people, you end up hurting yourself. I challenge you tonight. Excuse your excuses. Your friends don't need them, and your enemies won't believe you. Winning excuses everything. In between a promise and an excuse lies a lie. And there are not enough crutches for all the lame excuses in the hall. You know what? If you have to take some take-home messages, this is one. The moment you decide you're responsible for your success, you no longer blame anyone else. You begin to succeed. Yes. You can come for meeting after meeting, but as long as you have a secret kept somewhere for who to apportion blame, you'll never progress. Shift from your excuses. Resolve tonight, if it is up to be, it is up to me. I'm the only reason for my success, and by default, I'm the only reason for my failure. I take responsibility for my destiny. See, there's a young boy who asked the father to give him a life lesson. Dad, what is the most important lesson you'll ever give me? And the boy told him, the father told the son, let's take a walk down the stream. When they reached the stream, the father held the son by the neck, and he began to drown him forcibly. And the boy had only one option. He began to fight back for his life. At that moment when he was drowning, he didn't remember the name of the mother. He didn't remember whether he had gone to school. He didn't remember whether he was wearing smart clothes. He needed to fight for his life. He was very upset with the father. Dad, what are you doing? Then the father said, I wanted to teach you a lesson. The only person who can help you is you. No one else. Who can help you? You. You know, you can come for our meetings, we inspire you, we invigorate your spirits, we encourage you, we motivate you. But as long as there is someone you're blaming, you will not move forward. Bury your past in the sea of forgetfulness and take responsibility for your destiny. God does not need a mediator between you and him. He knows your address. He doesn't need to bless you through a husband. There are many single ladies who are successful. He doesn't need to bless you through an inheritance. There are many people who began from scratch and they're successful. Don't bring anything between you and God. Face him alone. Number 7 and the last one. Shift your limits. Shift your limits. Shift your limits. I heard of a story of a fisherman who had a weird behavior, way out of this earth. He picked up the big fish after fishing in the net and threw them back to the sea, and then retained the small fish or the medium-sized fish. Then there were some adjacent fishermen in another boat who saw him behaving like that, and they were upset, and they decided to confront him. They said, well, we've been fishermen for so long, we've never seen this kind of a conduct. How come you're throwing the big fish into the sea and retaining the small fish? And this fisherman who had this strange behavior looked at the other fishermen and said, well, I hate doing that, but I don't know what to do. My frying pan is too small. You see, you can go to the sea with a teaspoon or with a water bucket, but none of them can drink the sea waters. So the first thing I want to suggest to you about shifting your limits, number 1, believe beyond limits. Believe beyond limits. You know, I was talking with David Mwita, who is in our midst. He's right here. He's the owner of Moran Publishers, the former Macmillan, and I'm so honored to have you, sir. And he was there. He worked from a clerical, from a sales position, senior national sales manager, MD. And at some point, he formed a vision that he can buy the company. How many of you are working somewhere and you start forming that idea that you can buy it off? One go. When will you buy JQuat? But this man entertained the thought. He decided to believe something different. A foreign company, an international company. But you know, the moment you take the first step, the road gets clearer. The moment you light the candle, darkness begins to fade. As the bonfires of knowledge increase in your mind, darkness gets off your startled eyes. At times, universal perceptions and opinions are mistaken for universal principles. What if they were wrong? What if there was an alternative route? What if you can do it? One time I was going through a text and I read aloud about many men and women of faith in Hebrews 11. And I realized that the only reason they qualified to be in that great chapter is because they dared believe God for what they couldn't see. Most of us want to see and then we believe. Faith is taking a step and then seeing. After studying 25,000 failures, Napoleon Hill concluded the number one reason why they failed is inaction. They talk of what they are going to do. They have ideas about greatness and success. And they can say what's up about that, but they never take a step. They have good quotations, but they never take step. Faith is not talking. Faith is taking action. Even when the road is not clear, you take an action. Faith is opening that shop and you learn the ropes when you have opened it. It will be difficult, but everything else is empty talk. Faith is taking a step. If you want to start a ministry, start with one person. Preach to yourself. I started Sense 101 with Mercy. I began giving these lectures to Mercy until she started looking for a place for me to tell someone else. Take a step. Number 2, see beyond limits. Number 2, see beyond limits. I can't help but recall one time God asked Abraham, what do you see? And God was particular. He told me himself to look up, not to look down. Look up. He saw the stars. And God said, you know what? Your children will be as many as the stars. For me, he was saying, you'll be as great as what you can see. Then he stood on Mount Hebron. And God told him to look far. Maybe that's where God wanted him to go, on a mountain. And he said, all the land you can see, all the way to the Euphrates, which is in modern day Iraq, will be yours. You'll be as great as you can see. You can get what you can't see. Before it can come into the physical realm, you must see it with your spiritual eyes. The eyes of the mind must precede the manifestation in the physical.